The Meet Me for Coffee podcast is on site this week at the Journal of Commerce Inland Distribution Conference 2025 here in one of my favorite cities, Chicago. I'm excited to have a lot of speakers on the show this week, and we're going to be bringing some great content and hearing a lot of really great insights about what's going on in our industry and the broader supply chain. Hi everyone, thank you so much for listening in. Again, this is day 2 at the Journal of Commerce Inland Distribution Conference. I'm so excited to have the Meet Me for Coffee podcast on site recording. I am joined by my friend Ed. Ed, how are you doing today?
Samantha, I'm wonderful. It's
awesome.
Great day to be in freight.
Yeah, it's a great day to be in freight. It's great to be at a freight conference. How was your first day yesterday, and how's today going so far?
It was great. There was some really good content yesterday. I think they did a great job covering some basics. And what I like about Inland is, JOC, they're content people. So they do a great job of bringing really smart people into the room to share best practices. And I think from a variety of different backgrounds and perspectives. And I think our industry has like a connectedness problem. Like brokers don't necessarily know what the carriers are going through, and carriers don't always understand what the shippers are going through and what the problems are and what the bosses are telling them to do. And I think when you get people in the room to share what they're seeing and experiencing, the more perspectives that we share, the better we're going to operate as an industry, which is candidly a bit of a mess right now.
And I think that's what happens here. That's what we do well at this conference. So that's why this is my 3rd year coming, I believe. And so I know you've been before too, right?
I have. It's been a long time now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, before we get too far into this, tell me a little bit about who you are, what you do, so our listeners know.
Absolutely. My name is Ed Burns. I love building sandcastles and connecting people. We have a family business called Burns Logistics. We're an outsourced sales agency, so the carriers are our clients, and we really make a living off of being carrier advocates and helping them to find direct shipper freight. I wish more people had the business model because it works. And out of that, we created a tool called TruSygnal, which is a place for shippers and carriers to find each other and fall in love on contract freight. A lot of load boards out there, and we're just focused on the repetitive business and a place where shippers and carriers can find each other and work together.
Awesome. Well, I was just saying that I really have been wanting to hear more from the asset carrier perspective, and so what's even better than being able to talk to 100 asset carriers is just being able to talk to you right now, because you're talking to these asset carriers every day. So I'd like to just completely open the floor here to ask you, you're having daily conversations with ownership and leadership at these mid-sized fleets. We are in year 3 of a down freight market. What are you hearing at this point? What are these conversations sounding like? What are they thinking about, focused on, worried about? What do you got for me?
Yeah, they have a lot on their minds right now, and they are the mid-sized fleets. A lot of these carriers that we talk to, they're multi-generation family businesses. They've been around a long time. We had a fleet we work with just celebrate. A couple weeks ago, I was at their 75th anniversary picnic. We have another fleet that's celebrating their 100th year in business this year. That's amazing. That's beyond trucking. That's it's so Americana.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are losing money, right? So we have a very thin margin. We talk about margins. Usually margins people associate on the brokerage side, but every business has their profit margin. And growing up, my dad always said, well, we're in a pennies business. We're in a pennies business. I was like, I don't know what that means. But now I do.
Yeah.
It means that on a dollar, you're making a couple pennies.
Yes.
In profit. And so if you can make 5 cents as a truckload carrier, you're doing very well. Most people are not making 5 cents right now. Most people are losing a couple pennies on the dollar right now. So, and they've been doing it for a long time. And the ones that are surviving run healthy businesses, generally speaking. They know the business very well. They know how to operate. And they've created just about it. And I try to push them, like, what else can you do? But the reality is they've done a lot of stuff to operate more efficiently. There's really no more blood to squeeze from this stone. And
not without sacrificing other things like safety and maintenance and things that aren't worth sacrificing.
Exactly. So, there's kind of a tale of two carriers right now. And so the fleets that we try to help and support are the ones that pay their drivers fairly, maintain their equipment, have the proper insurance coverage, their tires aren't going to blow out on the middle of the interstate. Their out-of-service rates are typically significantly lower than the industry average of 22 point something percent. And they want to do the right thing. And the reality is that costs money to do the right thing, be fully insured, and as shipper requirements change, they require more umbrella coverage, right? Payment terms get pushed out from 30 days to 45 or to 60 days or to 75 days. That costs money, right? Because the cash flow costs money for these carriers. It's a super capital-intensive business. So what I've seen these carriers kind of do is they've like buckled in and said, I don't know how long this is going to last, but damn it, I'm gonna hang on. And what I've heard from a couple fleets lately is, if I go out of business, I'm doing it on my terms.
Yeah.
And what they mean by that is, I'm not taking freight that loses money, and I'm going to give a rate to the shipper that I need to be at to run a modestly profitable business. And if they don't like it, I'll walk away, right? Like, that's kind of become the attitude.
I think the line in the sand has been drawn a lot firmer in the last year. Because in the first couple years of the down market, we were coming off this, a pretty high market. It was a good time.
Mm-hmm.
We were just a lot of fleets wanted to make sure they retained the volumes that they had won and earned during that time. And so they were like, okay, we have to take some rate cuts to retain incumbency. Okay.
Yeah.
But now in the third year, it's like at some point they're just like, enough is enough. I don't know. Nobody knows for certain when this inflection point's going to be. Optimistically, I'm hearing Q2 of 26 in the speaking sessions this morning, but that's 6 months away. So you can't keep running this unprofitable freight for 6 more months to try to retain your incumbency. At this point, I feel like that's where we're at. The line in the sand has gotten a lot firmer, and we're feeling that pushback from carriers on rates.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think at the same time we're seeing the DOT administration kind of become more aware of some of the problems in the industry. So I think the timing is good, because the problems of our industry have for so long just been industry problems, and now we're starting to make news, right?
Yeah.
So what you need is the transportation manager at a shipper who's getting pressure from a C-level executive or whoever their boss is saying, oh, you got to save more money on freight. You got to save more money on freight. The Wall Street Journal is telling me that freight rates are down. Here's a big stick, go beat up the carriers. And I think when this news makes it mainstream, it makes it easier for the transportation manager to push back and say, no, these carriers can't do this anymore.
Yeah,
and we
have a safety problem right now.
Absolutely.
We have a compliance problem right
Absolutely.
now. But when people are under duress and desperate, you see businesses start making desperate decisions.
Yeah.
And so we've exacerbated the problem when it comes to safety and compliance because of the way fleets are making decisions right now to cut costs and where they're cutting corners, quite honestly. It's not a commendable thing to cut corners, right? But we can't deny that it's not been happening.
No, and I think as humans, like, oh, well, right now I can do this little thing. And then you do that little thing and you get away with it, so you do more of it, right? And that's kind of, I think, happened across the industry. And I think there are some fleets who just operate that way, right? They are fleets who cut corners across the board so they can offer really cheap freight, and they're moving freight, and a fleet that says no to cutting corners and is committed to safety and doing the right thing cannot compete with a rate like that.
Sure. Right. So the tale of two carriers that you mentioned, that's where I kind of see it right now in this market.
Absolutely. A friend of mine, he has a t-shirt business, right? We would call that cheap freight, right? Like, it's not pharma. You don't need team service on it or anything, but so he's got box trucks coming in and out of his facility every day. And he's like, Ed, these drivers starting to come pick. I went to load this truck. It's like a 26-foot box truck, and in the back was a camping cot and a 5-gallon bucket with a roll of toilet paper, right? That is not the standard of living that most people are accustomed to in the United States, and the rates that are required to support that standard of living are significantly lower. And that's the kind of stuff that I think is happening that, like, most people aren't aware of that.
Yeah.
But that's the reality of some of what's happening right now, and it's not good.
Yeah, I agree. Well, what else are we hearing from carriers as far as, I know that So we had those really major revisions to the BLS labor data that made a lot of headlines. Basically, we went back and revised out like 100,000 jobs a month for a few months over the summer, and showing that that's kind of what signaled to the Fed, whoa, maybe the labor market's not as great as everybody thought it was. And I had Mazen Dinoff from Uber Freight, he's their economist, on my podcast a couple weeks ago, and he said that those labor revisions did impact trucking capacity. So we actually did show now evidence of attriting more carrier capacity, more driver capacity than we thought for driver employment. So essentially what that tells me is we have seen this pressure push people out. So we're getting to a place now where we have fewer capacity options available in the marketplace, and that's starting to now be blended in with conversations of some type of moderate, they called it today. They said even a moderate stimulus to economic activity or manufacturing activity could kind of create this disruption, if you will, in the marketplace come 2026. So how are carriers feeling about the next year? Like, let's say that they start to get this pricing power a little bit back more in their control. What do you think their kind of strategies are, and is there going to be like a reckoning for shippers? Like, do you think these carriers are going to go, we've been under market rates, we need to go up? I don't know if they'll have that much pricing power right away, but walk me through what you think might happen with these carriers and these shippers in conversations in 26.
I want to preface this by saying that there are really good shippers out there who do the right thing and have stuck by their carrier partners. And I think a lot of fleets that have been treated well or fairly will maintain that for the shippers who've done right by them. If they have shippers who stuck by them in this down market and paid them a rate that they could, make a couple pennies on the dollar, those shippers are not going to see huge price increases. They might from a couple of providers. The market as a whole, I think, as soon as it's possible economically, there will be a bloodbath of rate increases, and it's going to be really ugly. Talking about the Fed, like the reality is the American dollar, with the inflation rate that we have, like just targeting a 3% or a 2 or 3% inflation rate, what you're saying is like we're okay as a nation with our costs going up 2 to 3% every year, with the understanding that that's the target and it'll probably be higher. So if real inflation is closer, from what I've read, like closer to 7%, freight rates should really be going up at 7% a year, which is crazy to think about. Like everything is going to go up and cost 7% a year. That is not what's been happening, obviously. So a lot of people have been staying flat or taking decreases, and carriers are happy to stay flat if it's an okay rate. Like if it's a decent rate, they can stay flat.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about rate, it's also about network discipline. A good carrier is going to have network discipline. They're going to have some freight that pays a little better than other freight. They're going to have some customers that it's closer to home than other stuff. And it all kind of comes together to like miraculously work. Like it's amazing to me to like talk to a carrier who has 100 or 200 trucks, and like the complexity of moving that much equipment and those many people around a region or the nation. It's astounding to show up on time and deliver on time with the frequency that they do. So network discipline, I think, is very important. And so it's not just rate, it's also, does this fit in my network? And I think some carriers have an attitude of, if you'll ask them, like, what do you do? And they're like, I'll go anywhere as long as it pays. It's like, those are the carriers that I don't think are going to be very successful, certainly now. But in the long run, the carriers that maintain network discipline are the ones that tend to be more profitable and more successful, and easier to work with, and easier for a shipper to give their freight to, right? Because when a carrier is calling on a shipper, right, it's going to be very important to communicate as this market flip happens, and that the carriers that need an increase to communicate why they need an increase and which lanes they need an increase on, right? Because in maintaining the relationship, you understand that when this market flips, on the other side of that flip is another flip at some point, right? And it's not going to be as good for the carriers again after it is good for the carriers. So communicating the need and the reason for a rate increase is going to be so important. And I think a lot of carriers have gotten angry and bitter, and that's not good for the freight world.
Yeah.
And they need to be able to articulate very clearly why they're going to need an increase, or hey, market's going to flip and I'm not going to give you an increase. That's a conversation worth having with a customer.
Yeah. Well, awesome. We are running up on time here, I think, but if you were to give advice to carriers, and maybe to brokers or shippers too, because you know what the carriers are going through right now. Mm-hmm. What's kind of the advice or the thing that you think should be top of mind as we go through Q4 into 2026?
I think there are a lot of really great resources out there. If a trucking company isn't running on an operating system like EOS, the book Traction, I think now is a really good time to invest in the processes that you need to operate more efficiently. The other piece is just making sure you have a culture of really good communication.
Yeah.
I don't think that's valued enough in our industry, and there are a lot of assumptions made. I think new people are coming in, a lot of new transportation managers, a lot of new decision makers, a lot of new brokers. These are your customers. You need to communicate effectively with them. What does that mean? I think that's investing in everything from, maybe it's a Dale Carnegie course, or maybe it's having a Sandler sales training person come in and train your whole team on communication, because every single person in the organization is representative of the organization, from dispatch to,
And I would say, I mean, as someone who lives in the sales side of things, don't assume people understand your business the way you understand your business.
Absolutely.
Don't make the dangerous assumption of saying that, like, my pricing should be understandable and justifiable because XYZ.
Yeah.
Like, something I've always had to do is ask my carriers or my brokers to slow down, explain the thought process, articulate it, write it out, put it in an email if you have to, around your bid strategy. Yeah. Why are your prices what they are? Give me as much like substance and context to that as you can. And even if they've been your customer for 10 years, pretend they need to know every little detail around it. Like, I just don't assume people know things, that it's your business, you live it, you breathe it, you know it. They don't.
Yes.
And even if they love you, maybe they have 100 of you or 20 of you that they deal with. And so, like, help them remember every, sales conversation, every RFP cycle, who you are, what you do, what you've done well, what justifies your pricing, what your costs to operate are, what your methodology was going into that pricing. People are comfortable when they understand something, right? Like, if you're going to give someone an increase, like, the first question is why. So why are you going to make them ask that question?
Yeah.
Explain the answer to the question before they can ask it.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We have a carrier that every time we do a pricing event, they give us a bid supplement to submit for them. It's amazing. It's
amazing, and so few do it.
Yeah.
I've done brokerage for a long time, and as a broker, I would turn back very detailed, here's why we bid what we bid.
Yes.
And almost every time the shipper go, wow, I've never gotten something like this. I'm like, that's amazing to me, because if I'm going to put my time and energy and effort into this, well, I want you to know what I did, I want you to know all the effort and energy I put into that and why it is what it is. And so just being able to articulate that, but really it just comes down to, like, don't assume other people understand your business like you do, and help to educate your customers on what your business is up against. Did your insurance costs go up? Are maintenance costs rising? Like, are you tracking this? Do you have a beat on this? And what did you do to mitigate it? But what is the increase regardless? And help have these conversations with your customers.
Yeah. And to that point, the advice I would give to shippers is, I think sometimes there are people who take a new role or are coming into the shipper role of a transportation manager or traffic manager, whatever the role's called. And it's really easy to just say, like, okay, I have a lot on my plate. I don't have time to have calls with everybody. But the amount of time that you will save by just taking those 2-minute or 5-minute phone calls, over time, that will compound. And having those relationships with these providers, especially coming up to a swing that no promises on the timing, but it's inevitable. So I think there are people who will lose their jobs because they've been short-sighted and said, like, just send me a text or an email and, like, that's it. And they've gone for cheap, and then their budgets are going to get blown, and they saved a couple $1 million the last few years, but they're going to lose $25 million next year or whenever it happens. But having those conversations and thinking long term and understanding and selling up the food chain of, okay, you have cost pressure from above you, it's okay to push back, but find the data like, okay, us increasing our umbrella to $5 million costs these carriers this much, and pushing out our payment terms will cost us this much, and because everything has an effect downstream. And to the brokers, I would recommend something similar, like maintain the relationships, communicate. The transactional nature of the business isn't human. Humans are relational in that we want to build friendships, we want to connect with other people, and those things can last a really long time in this business. Freight friends are the best friends. Yeah.
Agreed. Yeah, this is a service-based business, and I always say that if you're going to have someone do a service, you want to know, like, and trust them. So I think there's absolutely a place. I'm all for digital brokerage and certain very hyper transactional and predictable spot type of volumes, and we have APIs for that, and we have digital connections for that, and there are owner operators for that, and there are all sorts of things that fit in that space. But the majority of our freight in America is moving on contracts with mid-sized to enterprise-sized fleets, requiring relationships because of the nature of that service that's happening. We're talking high volume, high dollar, committed. Things go wrong when things don't go right? Like so that's a majority of our industry, and so that is relationship driven. That's relationship based, and it requires a good understanding of who you're working with.
100%, yes. Absolutely.
Oh my goodness, great conversation, Ed. Thank you so much for being here. If people would like to talk to you more, learn more about Burns Logistics or TruSygnal, how can they find you? I'm a pretty big fan of LinkedIn. I can be found on LinkedIn as Ed Burns. LinkedIn.com/in/relationship-guy. And TruSygnal.com, TruSygnal. Those forms come to me, so I will answer. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you making the time.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you, everyone, for meeting us for coffee.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Meet Me for Coffee podcast. We're recording on-site at the Journal of Commerce Inland Distribution Conference this week. If you like this episode, be sure to check out our channels where we'll have multiple others published here this week with content from the show. And in just a couple of weeks, we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming, discussing where freight markets and economics meet. I hope you guys can meet us for coffee.